Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh to all our listeners, and thank you for joining in to tonight's episode of Business Matters hosted here with the Minara Chamber of Commerce. I'm your host, Essa Hassim. I am one of the directors at the Minara Chamber of Commerce, as well as an entrepreneur myself in the various companies in the building and construction industry. Today, we have quite an interesting topic for you listeners. It is on something called data visualization. So these days, we live in a world of artificial intelligence. We live in a world of where different technologies are being used in business to make things more quicker, more faster. And as they say, we need to keep up with the times. So to help us and enlighten us about this topic on data visualization, we have a very, very interesting guest with us today who goes by the name of Ismail Dhorat. He's the director of ZYE Labs, and he's going to enlighten us on some more information about data visualization. Assalamu alaikum, Ismail. How are you?
Wa alaikum salam, Isa. Alhamdulillah, and yourself?
Alhamdulillah. It is so nice to have you here, Ismail. And I think we are all honored to have you on this episode of the Minara Business Matters to teach us how we can integrate data visualization, particularly in a South African context, for all of our businesses and to improve. So, Ismail, tell us about data visualization and firstly, what is it? What are we talking about?
Okay, Isa. So data visualization is basically taking your data and demonstrating it in a visual format that allows senior decision makers the ability to make decisions based on that data. It's more than just typical Excel reports and figures and statistics. So a very simple example of this would be a chart in Excel. So that would be a very simple level of data visualization.
Right. And can you perhaps walk us through, the significance on how important is data visualization tools and techniques in aiding our decision-making or processes within the South African enterprises?
Yeah, I think that's an important question. So to understand why data visualization is becoming important, we need to look at what's the forces affecting business today in today's operating environment. So we're seeing, exponential increase in change happening in your operating environment. There's massive innovation in the technology sector, and there's an increasing move to digitization of processes. So all of these steps creates a lot of data, and it reduces the value, the cost of leveraging your data, and it's becoming a lot cheaper for companies to store data. So a gig of data is 10 to 100x cheaper than it was in the past. Isa, I still remember when I got my first computer, we paid over 1,500 rand to upgrade the hard drive.
Yeah.
And it was only like less than a 500 meg. I saw an ad recently online for a ring that you wear on your finger that has more storage than that, and it looks like a normal wedding ring. And we live in a hyper-connected world, so there's an increased rate of knowledge creation and content creation. So that's putting pressure on businesses to adapt and move very quickly. So, the previous way of doing things may not work because you may not respond fast enough to what's happening in your environment. And you find that, by the time you are making changes or you're responding to a situation, maybe too late. And, there's very high levels of uncertainty. So that's why I would say that, data analytics and visualization and the communication of that data is becoming critical. So to use an analogy, an example I like to think about is if we look at getting from point A to point B using different modes of transport. So if you're a cyclist and you're on a bicycle and you're going from point A to point B, you don't need a lot of information. You're moving quite slowly. So the most you may need is maybe, what gear you're in and some road signs. If you're in a car, you're driving fast, you're driving much faster. So there's fuel that you need to know about. You need to know, what gear you're in, what's your rev counter. Maybe you need a GPS to say where you're going. You need road signs, you need road markings to get to your destination safely. And then we compare that to, an aeroplane. If you look at a picture of a cockpit, there's a lot of information and instrumentation in a cockpit. And the reason for that is, the airplane is functioning in a very turbulent environment, and a small mistake in an airplane can be catastrophic. So in our business operating environment these days, we in a turbulent environment similar to what an airplane would be like. So we need a lot more instrumentation and information that helps us to make the decisions that we need to drive our business in the right direction. And that's the best way that I can describe it. This instrumentation or dashboarding and visualization can help you drive down costs, increase revenue, drive efficiencies, and innovate in your business. So we've seen examples of retailers using predictive analytics and visualizations in order to optimize their supply chain and minimize their stock on hand. So they predict what their sales are going to be, and then they order less and they optimize their cash flow in that way.
Definitely, I think optimization of cash flow is, I think, a challenge that many businesses in South Africa face at this moment in time, whether it may be, being bitten by debtors that have not paid you yet, or just overall, I think, given that you say that that's probably gonna catch listeners by the ear when it comes to maximizing their cash flow. But just a quick question to implement something like this, right, Ismail? To implement something like this, is it a costly investment though to go ahead and implement something like this in a business? What sort of scope, so what sort of scale of the businesses does the business have to be? Does it have to be a large business, a medium business, or a small startup business?
So I would say, I mean, this capability and the need for this is across the breadth of an organization, from the smallest organization to the largest organization, right? But the complexity and the scale of your investment that you need to make is going to scale according to the size of your business. So as an example, a small business with 10 staff, maybe one site, they can get away with using something like Excel, which is the most popular and the most used data visualization tool. They don't have to spend a lot of money. It's very cost effective. It's very cheap. An organization that's got 1,000, 2,000 employees, they may need to spend a little bit more time investing into the technologies needed. So, I wouldn't say that it's a very costly exercise. If you're small, go for the simple solutions. If you're much larger, then you start, investing in more mature solutions that are relevant to the size of your business.
Right. And does your company, ZYE Labs, do you guys assist businesses in taking this next step?
Yes, so we have previously assisted companies with their visualization efforts and analytics capabilities, and we worked across the breadth of the entire process chain, for getting data. So, like for example, data visualizations is the final step in the process.
Right.
So before you actually get to the visualization, you need to actually source your data. Then you need to process it. Then you need to aggregate data from multiple sources, do some analytics on top of the data, and then the final step is where you actually visualize it and put it onto a dashboard. So, in a small organization like a SMME, they would maybe extract data from their financial system or point of sale system and then put it into Excel, do some pivot tables on that. Simple use case would be a pivot table, and do some charting, and then maybe email it to the boss, who can then make a decision. In a much larger organization, they would have need to develop scripts that would do that in an automatic fashion.
Right. So then with the rapid advancement of technology, these days technology is evolving so quick, it is so difficult to keep up. So how has, for instance, data visualization evolved in South Africa specifically? And what sort of trends are evident that perhaps is shaping its future here in our country?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. So if you look at what's happening in the data space and analytics space, it's really taken over off in the last decade or so. And we saw initially with some of the trends that South African companies were a bit lagging, especially on the enterprise level. So, internationally, there was a move towards big data and big data technologies and AI. And South African companies were sometimes about 2 years behind, but we're seeing that gap sort of close down, and local companies are now much quicker to implement solutions in the space. I think they're realizing the competitive advantage that they get from solutions. In terms of different scales of organizations, the large companies like your enterprises, your banks, your telecos, your big organizations with 5,000 plus employees, they've been investing in these tools for a long time. Where we've seen the gap is in the SMMEs, and they typically would use something like Excel. But we're also seeing that now with a lot of software as a service, it's becoming a lot more cheaper for smaller organizations to implement solutions. Whereas before you needed a lot of investment, you needed to spend on licensing, consulting, and a whole host of other services. Now you can implement solutions much quicker and easily.
Mm.
Yeah.
Mm.
And
So,
yeah.
sorry, go on.
Yeah, so and then in terms of where we're seeing it going into the future, we're seeing what they call democratization of data and data access. So that means, all the people within your company, for the bigger companies, will have access to data, and they're able to build their own dashboards or visualizations. We're seeing, data literacy becoming a critical skill for employees. So employees need to be able to look at visualizations, reports, and interpret that data. Companies are building real-time dashboards where they got access to information in real time. And then data storytelling is, another sort of emerging trend, where data is being combined with an analysis and a visualization and a narrative to tell a story and contextualize the data to make it easily accessible for executives to make decisions.
Do you think South Africa, right, given the knowledge base in South Africa, particularly, you mentioned SMMEs, right? Do you think South Africa is ready to take it to the next step in data visualization? What would you say?
Yeah, I think it is. I think yes, there may be let's call it a bit of a skills gap. Demand for technical skills is, it's always harder to find technical skills, technology skills in South Africa compared to let's say Southeast Asia and other places. But the trend I'm seeing is some of these solutions are baked into your software. So the need for a SMME to have these skills or to have someone technical or hire a consultant is actually reduced. So
Mm.
a simple example would be, if you're running an e-commerce store and then you go and purchase a software from one of these software as a service e-commerce providers, they'll provide you with visualizations already baked into a product. And then, if you've got more complex requirements, you can then integrate. But
Mm.
out of the box, you've got access to what you need to.
Right, right. Just for our listeners that are tuned in, please, if you guys have any questions for Ismail, or myself, please WhatsApp the Al Ansar's number on 060-904-1056. That's 060-904-1056. And I'm sure our guests would be more than happy to take through any questions that you guys might have on this very topic.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned that, Ismail. I think given that they are, these days, especially in the SMME frontier, where you get a lot of family businesses, and I think there's a lot of students that are going to university that are learning more about IT, and
Mm.
I think with data visualization, maybe that's what assists them to take their business or their father's business or their family business to the next level.
Yeah, I agree. So, you mentioned students going to university and learning technology. So one of the very, very early, if you want to call it, emerging trends, is a new role we think that is coming out, and that's called a
Mm,
decision. Yeah? We've seen, you've probably seen in the news, data scientists or artificial intelligence engineers or data engineers, and we think there's a new role called the decision engineer. It's very early. There's no roles advertised, but it's a necessary role that combines both business knowledge and technical skills that can then build the visualizations and the reporting necessary for executives to make decisions. And it could be a way for family businesses to take their business to the next level, and to grow, and either to grow in terms of revenue or to reduce costs and drive efficiencies. And a lot of these solutions are not expensive, uh,
mm,
if your organization is not large. You could implement something quite cost effectively. And the more immature the organization in terms of their capability, the quicker and the more value that they can get from implementing some quick solutions.
definitely. Yeah. And when it comes to South Africa, what's the challenges that perhaps you feel that businesses currently face when it comes to implementing the effective data visualization strategies, and perhaps how do you feel, in your professional opinion, can these obstacles that they face be overcome?
Yeah, so I think the primary challenge we've seen in South Africa, and you've alluded to that in your previous question, is the maturity of the organization in terms of their capabilities. Uh,
Mm,
so whereas internationally, a lot of the organizations or businesses have digitized very quickly. South Africa is a
mm,
bit, a little behind, and you may have a lot of, let's say, entrepreneurs, first founders of businesses that grew up in an environment where technology was not easily accessible. But then what's happening now is you've got the younger generation that grew up with technology, they're coming into their businesses and they're now implementing changes, right? Or you've got the new founders that have grown up with technology and they're implementing changes. So they're improving the analytics capabilities. And then we also see where the foundational steps are not in place. The processing of the data, gathering of the data, all the steps we previously discussed. So those are not in place. And then when you try to do your analytics or visualization, you find that you're missing data.
mm,
So
mm,
the access is typically a stumbling block. Um, and then, in the medium-sized organizations, sometimes access to the data may be problematic. They may be, in old systems or in a system where the data is not easily accessible. So the getting it out may not be easy. So you need to, do something there. Um, and or the data in the source system may not be in a way that makes it easily usable for data visualization. So you may have a point of sale system that's an old point of sale. You used to have those old DOS-based point of sales. So accessing the
yes.
data is quite difficult. So you've got some people still running on this very old point of sale and they work very well. But
Mm,
now access to the data may be difficult. The data stored on files. So those are some of the challenges. So you need to write scripts to pull that data and put it into a system. And that's where you typically see something like data warehouses or building a database that consolidates data for analytics and visualizations can be useful. And obviously that only makes sense in a company that's at the right size where that would be needed.
So from your experience then, when it comes to, for instance, top three sort of topics that a business should perhaps run some sort of data visualization information, to make better business decisions. Like I'll give you one example. Perhaps a company would want to see the total sales per salesperson,
Yeah.
that to see that in a visualized format, in a data visualized format, is can make them make better decisions about that salesperson. Is there
Hmm.
any more, like for instance, two more examples that you think businesses should look at, topics of their business that can make them make better decisions by using these aids?
Yeah, so I mean, I think the what visualization and what to use is very context and business specific, right? Uh, but every business is dealing with revenue, cost of sales, cost, and employees. So those three factors you would need KPIs around those three factors,
Yes.
and you could build very interesting visualization. You mentioned the example of the sales, so we've built previously where you had a hotspot on a map that showed you visually, uh, where there were hotspots in terms of good sales, bad sales. So someone making a decision could visually look at a map of South Africa and say, oh, you know what, I've got a problem in this area and this area is doing fantastically well. Okay, let me drill down into the details and figure out why this area I'm having a problem, in this area I'm fine. So that would be an
Mm.
example that's very specific to an organization that's operating in multiple parts of the country, and that's one to visually display the data in a way that makes sense for executives.
Perfect. Perfect. Definitely. Okay, we gonna be going to an ad break in a few seconds' time, and when we'll come back and we will continue with our discussion here on Minara Business Matters. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome back, listeners. You tuned into Minara Business Matters with myself, Essa Hassim, one of the directors of the Minara Chamber of Commerce. We have been chatting to Ismail Dhorat, who is the director of a company called ZYE Labs, and he's here to talk to us about data visualization. Just continuing from where we left off, he's enlightened us about what is data visualization and why it's so important for businesses in South Africa to get in touch with this topic and to implement this in their business. So, Ismail, we often hear about the power of storytelling in data visualization. So, from your
Mhm.
experience, how does storytelling enhance the communication of insights, especially in the context of South African businesses?
Yeah, so data storytelling is one of the emerging visualization trends, and that's where you try to craft a narrative around the data. And as a species, we humans, we remember stories much better. We've been sitting around fires telling stories for centuries. Uh, but in some way or form, businesses have always been doing data storytelling. It's just a new word that we've given to this capability. So, as an example, if someone is preparing a report for the CEO or for executive, they would then take a report, analyze it, put it into a presentation, craft a narrative around that, provide contextual information, and then present that to the executive or senior manager. And they're often trying to answer the question of why the data is the way it is, and forming theories on why they think the data is like that. And we've seen companies using it to drive product development. It's better able to drive action because a lot of times, if you just provide plain reports without any narrative around it, executives don't have the context, and they're unable to make the relevant decisions, and usually they don't take action. So it's making the data more accessible to executives, senior managers, especially when they very busy, or you've got a founder of a business who's extremely busy, got a lot of things on his plate. He doesn't have time to analyze the data and figure out things. So crafting a narrative and a data story will help there. And it also, if you've got a much bigger company with a few departments, having a data story can help align the company around a similar sort of vision and alignment on action to take forward. And we've seen, companies using it, data stories for internal communications as well, communicating internally to the customers and the employees in order to drive behavior and change.
I think we're just going to go to one of the questions from one of our listeners. Salam, it's Nazreen here. Great show. Thank you, Nazreen. Her question to Ismail is, how is Gen AI impacting data visualization? And how does a small business start the process of using Gen AI to develop data visualization for themselves?
It's an interesting question. So just a quick definition for people that may not be familiar with the term. Gen AI would be generative AI. So that would be something like ChatGPT, which is one of the most popular generative AI tools, or something that generates an image. So there's a few ways where generative AI is coming in. It's still very early stages. So one way you could use generative AI, like one of the existing chat GPT tools, would be to feed it your data and tell it to generate a visualization for you. That would be, an easy way to do it, or to upload your data and tell ChatGPT or one of these tools to analyze the data and provide you some feedback, right? But then, a smaller business may not have the necessary resources and the capital to invest in a custom-made solution. But what we are seeing is these generative AI solutions are being baked into your analytics products. So you'll be able to get this as a service much more cost effectively and cheaper. So one of the ways one of the directions we see analytics and visualization heading in is what we term augmented analytics or automated analytics. So previously, you would build a visualization and put it onto a dashboard, and you need a human in there to have a look at it, make the decision, and take the action. But what we're seeing very early stages of tools and solutions being developed around this, is where your AI will automatically analyze your data, provide a recommendation, and sometimes even take an action with a person just monitoring to make sure the outcomes are correct. And we've built a system where it's some of this, which we call augmented analytics and recommendations automatically. And it can generate the visualization for you if necessary. So that's how we see those two related.
Fantastic. I think really, really, you guys are making some headways in the AI field, especially with data visualization. I think one really has to use their mind a lot. I think a lot of businesses these days get boggled down with all these terminologies and all these new things, but I think you have to embrace them. Am I right? You have to. That's the way of business. That's how business is in the future, and we're just gonna absorb it.
Yeah, I think it's important to embrace it, but it's also important not to get caught up with the buzzwords and the latest things. You've got to have a clear use case, clear investment decision, and a clear value proposition for implementing it. Because to be honest, we're not in that game, but there's a lot of consultants that will push a lot of buzzwords and just use the latest buzzwords just because they want to sell consulting services. But that's not okay. You've got to look at your organization, say what's relevant to me.
Yes.
The whole world is going AI and generative AI and doing whatever, but does it make sense in my business? And how can I business? And is it appropriate? Is the investment that I need to make appropriate for my business?
Yeah, definitely. I think that's the only thing you look at the outcome and then you decide whether that'll give you the output that you require. That justifies any investment in any business.
Yeah, exactly.
Could you just perhaps share any success story or a quick case study where data visualization has led to some sort of tangible benefit?
Yeah, so there's a few. So, one of the challenges we've seen with data visualization and implementing analytics was information gaps. So during the COVID crisis, we were pulled into a project. And when we started analyzing the project, what we found that there was a information gap um, on what PPE was needed at the hospital level, right? And the potential task teams didn't know what was available, who needed what, how quickly they were using the PPE and all of that. So when we did the exercise, we recognized there was a information gap, and one of the solutions that was built was consolidating this PPE stuff and putting it onto a dashboard. So task teams had a single consolidated view to see what was PPE stock levels, and then they were able to make purchasing decisions, stock allocation decisions very easily. That's sort of one use case. We've seen banks, a bank that was, had moved a lot of their processes to online platforms. So they were creating a lot of data. There was a lot of digitalization of the entire process of onboarding customers and customers signing up, but they were still facing problems with long wait times, customers not taking up offers. So what they did was then they went and consolidated all their data, and they built dashboards for all the product teams. So the executives in each product team could see, okay, I've got, this is my end-to-end workflow, and this is where I'm getting customers stuck in the process, and they could then drill down and investigate where the problem was. Then we've,
Excellent.
yeah.
No, I think that's it just shows you how easy this can actually make business, and it seems to be the root of solving problems.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it helps businesses make better decisions and avoid mistakes, I think.
I think we're just going to be going on to a second ad break where we come back and then we just get some closing advice from our esteemed guests. And I'll just hand you guys over to our last ad break and then we'll be back right after this. Welcome back. This is Minara Business Matters with Essa Hassim. I'm your host. I'm one of the directors in the Minara Chamber of Commerce. And we've been having a rather fruitful discussion tonight with Ismail Dhorat, and his topic of discussion today was data visualization. A really, really enriching discussion we have had tonight with our esteemed guest. And we've just got back from an ad break, and I hope everybody's brains are all tickling with what Ismail had to say tonight. So, Ismail, from your side, um, what sort of advice, can you give businesses in South Africa that's looking to harness the full potential of data visualization in their business operations? And what sort of resources are available to support them throughout this journey?
Yeah. So I think the first thing or the first advice I would give is to ask the question like, how effectively are you currently using data in your business to make decisions? Whether it's a very small business, whether it's a large business, just ask that question and then evaluate where you are in with that answer. A larger organization may have to do a more detailed exercise to answer that question. A smaller company can answer that question, in 5 to 10 minutes, and they may be able to get some value by accessing their financial system and getting some reports and doing some visualizations there. There's a lot of maturity models that will help you evaluate where you are. And I can go into detail of those maturity models, or if someone needs assistance, I can share that with them. We've got our own maturity model that, I don't want to go into the detail right now, but I can share happy with any listener who contacts me. And then, so you do that maturity assessment and assess where you are at that point in time. And then I would say the next step would be you catalog or you recognize what data assets or sources of data you have. So a very large organization, that may take a bit longer. Smaller company, 10 employees, you can do that in an hour. You can say, okay, I've got access to my ERP or financial system, Sage. and I may have access to a manufacturing system or whatever. And then from there, you identify your key challenges, quick wins, and use cases that you need to develop, where visualization and analytics can improve decision making. And there's a few sort of practices that you can do that will help you do that. One's called value stream mapping or value network analysis, that will help you say, okay, here's where my critical points in my business, I can optimize decision making and drive value for my customers, reduce cost, increase revenue. Then you would develop a vision and a strategy, and then obviously implement any solutions if necessary, because a small organization may not even need to implement a solution. It may be as simple as using Excel. Excel is cheap. It's like a couple of $100 per month, so you don't have to worry about it. And then you implement your use case. So your use case for a small company can be on Excel. A use case for a much larger company, may need some software. And then you obviously monitor your solution. And then if there's any changes in your environment or circumstances, then you would obviously update that. And then you do that for every single use case and problem that you identify. And then if a company has the relevant technical sort of capabilities, they can do it internally, or they have someone who's technical in their staff that can do it. Otherwise, I would recommend you partner with an organization that has the necessary capabilities. I'm happy to offer anyone that reaches out a free consultation and assessment for their business. We obviously have to, limit the scope. It can't be too long and it can't be a very long organization. But I'll share my contact details, and if anyone contacts me, happy to do a free consultation and evaluation. And we've also written a bit of a guide for implementing analytics and visualization in your business for SMMEs. So if anyone contacts me, I'm happy to share that with them as well.
Wonderful. Thank you. I think that's a wonderful offer, and I think our listeners should take it up. Ismail, you can share your contact details now. I mean, I'm sure people would be guys, I hope you guys get your pen and papers out, maybe just to take down Ismail's details. And after the show, or even in the coming days, feel free to contact Ismail. And if you do need Ismail's details as well, please feel free to call the Minara Chamber of Commerce, our offices, and we'd be glad to share Ismail's details as well. Ismail, your details perhaps for the listeners that are willing to take it down.
Yeah, so you can contact me on email. It's Ismail, ISMAIL, at Zylabs, ZYELABS.net. That's my email. Or I'm on Twitter, and my first name is my handle. It's Ismail. Or I'm on LinkedIn, which is Ismail Dhorat. So you can contact me any one of those three things, or via my website.
Perfect. Shukran. Thank you so much, Ismail, for that wonderful advice for tonight. And also to our listeners, just to note that it's that time of the year again where the nominations are up again for the Minara Chamber of Commerce Awards dinner. So the event is going to be hosted on the 25th of October, and the nominations are now open. So guys, please feel free to log on to our website. That is www.minara.org.za, and please fill out your nominations, and let us try and recognize all those individuals and businesses that are making a difference in the community. And in Islam, it is we must recognize those that are doing good, and this is what we're here to do. And if you guys wish to join the Minara Chamber of Commerce, the application forms as well are on the website. And just another announcement, another initiative which will be nice for our listeners to join will be on the 11th of May. There is an Amal workshop that is going to be hosted, particularly for the PBOs and the public benefit organizations and the entities that wish to understand more about the accounting matters, and especially since it's tax season. So you are welcome to log on to the Amal website, that is www